Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Freebird Games Discord Q&A session for the 10th anniversary of To the Moon. With me, we have Can Gao, and let's just start the questions off immediately with introduce yourself and tell us what you do for Freebird Games.
It's serious and down to business. My name is Can. I founded Freebird Games about actually more than 10 years ago. But most people knew of it from around 10 years ago when To the Moon came out. And nowadays we're kind of growing more and we have a lot more help around the world. So yeah, it's an honor to be here. And thank you for helping host this, Joe and Meelika. And it's great. It's an honor to have this chance to talk with the community and answer some questions.
And it's going to be a lot of fun. We have some really weird ones coming up. I hope you're ready.
Weirder the better.
All right.
Go ahead.
Next question. And we had various people ask us, any updates on the To the Moon movie?
Right. Right off the NDA breaking.
No pressure. It's just that everyone wants to know this question.
Any updates? Well, I mean, it is still going as far as I know, and I think I'm allowed to say this, that I did read the script, at least the second draft of it already. Yeah, so it's definitely going, but it is going very slowly, as all things are in the industry. And again, there's actually a lot of different reasons why there's been delays on that front, and some of them are actually for good. Yeah, I think that's as far as I can say about it. So there's hope, and we're just waiting. But it's one of those things that I would suggest. Just don't worry about it, forget about it until when suddenly just bam hits you right in the knockings.
From the Discord itself, we have Sarah asking, how do you remain motivated and focused on your projects?
I don't, but I mean, like, you kind of just gotta work through like the period of time when you're not motivated and focused. Eventually it goes away. But one thing that helps is that for me, one of the lucky things is I get to do like kind of a jack of all trades, a bit of everything. Not that well, but able to kind of at least try to dip my feet into it. So if I get stuck on one thing, or if I lose focus on one thing, I will kind of move on to the other ones, and it kind of helps jumpstart the other. So like as always, like for example, the taking scenes, for example, when I'm working on a scene and when I get stuck on writing the dialogues, I just move on to the music, and then it kind of helps to establish the atmosphere, and it helps to write the dialogue, and vice versa. So it really just helps to kind of move on to the different facets of the same part of thing you're trying to work on. It kind of just cross inspiration in that sense.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really helpful for people to know that, to kind of shift gears. So
yeah, and it's not something that I think it's something that everybody can like do in one way or another. It's like it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be like master level at doing something. For me, one of the, I'm far from master level at like a lot of those things, but just being able to dip into that mood, the atmosphere, and just kind of the feeling of it through a different lens, that just in and of itself, it helps a lot.
All right. It is really good.
All right.
Pressure.
Actually, two questions. From various people again. What inspired To the Moon and the concept behind it? Was the whole series planned from the beginning? So
first of all, I guess the full series is never planned from the beginning. There's always some changes, but there are certain undertones and kind of general trajectories that's kind of planned. And always, even for most of the games I make, even for these individual games, it always feels kind of like a heat-seeking missile. So you kind of shoot it off in the general direction. You kind of know where you want to land, but then as you go, actually you know exactly where you're going to land. That's the one thing I like, for me at least, that to know. But then the course of it, you kind of correct. You kind of decide how it gets there and adjust that trajectory as you go. But at the start, you just know where you want to end up, and you just shoot at the general direction.
Okay. So what about the inspiration behind To the Moon? What was that? What was that concept behind it?
You remember that? I almost got away with it. Okay. So for the big two, I guess, for To the Moon, for example, one, like the general concept behind SigCorp and etc. The general framework of the series is the time my grandpa fell ill, and I kind of just something that made me I think reflect a lot more about one day, everyone ends up there in one way or another, and it's just thinking back about the things they want to change and the times past about that. So I think the general concept of the series and the SigCorp's technology as a whole mostly came from that. But as for the individual story of people like Johnny River and stuff, it's based on some personal stuff, personal happenstances and people I used to know. I'm not sure how much I should say about that. But,
no, that's fine. No.
Yeah.
But that's really cool. Zenowinski says, how do you feel knowing that you shaped so many people's childhoods?
I'm actually surprised, honestly, that if people, like, when they were children, actually played the game and didn't like get bored to tears halfway through, because it does deal with a lot more, like, it's kind of a slow burn thing, and it deals with a lot more I guess somewhat mature subjects,
right.
in a way, a sense of the word that's not usually used in entertainment. But so honestly, I didn't know. I don't know, but if so, if there's some kind of influence, I hope it's positive, and it's an honor. I hope it helped in some way, because I think when I was growing up, I would have, not to self-indulge, but because it is like what I ended up making, so it is certainly the kind of thing that I kind of would have wanted to play myself, and kind of just maybe not lift the spirit, because sometimes it does the opposite,
right?
But just at least kind of makes me feel kind of connected and relating to it in one way or another.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
that's good. It's important that as you create something, that you would first yourself enjoy consuming that, whatever it is. So that's good.
Yeah, because you gotta. It's the only way to understand what you're doing, I think. At least in some way to go from somewhere. Actually, that's an interesting thing, and I hope these segues are okay.
They're 100% okay.
Just so it's one thing I was thinking of recently too, was with, like, say, the character River, and the general stories and kind of the way stories form that we kind of really grasp onto. So for To the Moon, for example, I feel like it's so one of the things that connects really well and can kind of go pretty far is to take something that everybody can relate to and kind of just stretch it out and just kind of you follow the general direction it shoots out at, and then you just keep on going beyond something that people are familiar with. So it's both familiar and new. So taking, like, the character River, for example, I think it was interesting, and I'm not sure what the right word is, but I think one of the things with her is that she does have the the Asperger's condition, and is now somewhere on the autism spectrum. So that's not perhaps something that a lot of people can directly relate to, but her underlying desires and the difficulties and etc., those things are actually something that everybody can relate to. The desire for connecting with others, and the difficulty in trying to trying to bridge that gap. So it's something that everybody can relate to, but taken to a distance where that's kind of also kind of new to people at the same time, to kind of show them a different perspective. So I feel like it kind of goes for a lot of stories, and in general, that's the kind of stories that we connect with and kind of get intrigued by the most.
They have just a little bit of ourselves in it, right? So
because it takes your, like, a normal self, but it kind of projects it far into kind of a fascinating realm that you can both relate to and be fascinated by at the same time.
Next question is from Maureen. What's the most challenging part of development?
The most challenging part of development is the actual development itself, just the grind, right? It's like what the question was asking too. Like, it's just difficult to keep on going sometimes, and that goes for every project and everyone. I think it's actually to kind of remain true to yourself. I know that sounds cheesy, but especially nowadays, I feel like after To the Moon had the fortunate takeoff that it did, like there's certainly a lot of pressure to do things a certain way and keep all the kind folks in the community who's been supporting to keep the projects going, keep them happy, right? Which which makes a lot of sense too. But at the same time, one of the ironic things is that to be able to keep on doing great things in the future, it requires kind of wandering off course from what people are used to. And that process is kind of a learning process that will undoubtedly disappoint other people and kind of subvert expectations in sometimes not so good ways. But it's also a requirement for growth, right? So, but yeah, like when there's already a following for a series and there's a lot of expectation for how certain things are going to be developed and how certain things will be, it's certainly some kind of pressure to kind of veer it off course from that, to kind of be grasp onto the short-term contentment of the folks, but yeah, at the same time, long-term wise, it leads to like a basically decline, because you're running out of juice. You're only straying. I mean, you're only staying within a certain confines that will eventually run out. So to be able to kind of reject that and kind of just gravitational field is something that I find really challenging, but has to be done.
Right. And also remaining true to like your original vision of like what you wanted to express.
Sure. I mean, at some point, it certainly verges a bit, right? Yeah, the important thing is not to let it merge too much.
Yeah. Right. All right, moving on. Any merch ideas? Someone said, I want to show my love for the series. I'd love to have a merch.
Yeah, I think there are some merch ideas, and actually there's some incoming too. We're also taking some ideas from the community as well. Like now that there's more time and resources to kind of try to get stuff going.
More various people asked, what are your future plans?
And that could be also Freebird Games, if not just specifically you.
It's kind of at a, like, people ask me, well, if the series is ended or not. I wouldn't say it's ended. And I feel like, To the Moon series, like the format of it is kind of kind of lucky, right? In the sense that there's so much potential to explore, like anything there is to explore about, just human nature and all that. The nice thing about it too is usually like with game series, like, if you have a good ending, it wraps up everything perfectly, right? It seals up everything perfectly. And if you do already have a sequel, you would have to unstitch all of that and then kind of have. So that's oftentimes why the sequels also often kind of roll a bit. That's and has the risk of kind of messing up previous installments and stuff like that. Whereas in this, in To the Moon series and Sequel series, it's nice in that you have this all overarching thing that can go on, but at the same time you also have the structure of the two doctors exploring person's memory, and they can at the end of every story, the patient dies. That's the end of the story. That's that. But you still have, so you can still have that the perfectly wrapped up ending for each particular story, but you can open up new ones infinitely, and there's just so much to explore out there. I think we haven't touched on a lot of the interesting subjects out there, so ever be like, I mean, not ever, but I don't foresee like kind of just announcing like, oh, this is we're never gonna make another Moon episode again. But however, there's the underlying story about Dr. Watts and Dr. Rosalind, and so for that side of things, I don't know for sure at this point. The story, there is still more story to them, but I'm not quite sure right now how to deliver it, whether through the full game, like mini-sode, or like a comic, or any kind of thing. Maybe talk to you about the potential, like the plans for what happens in the story. But
I know, but other people don't.
You probably know more than me. But yeah, I don't know for sure, but there is more story to it. To the Moon, Finding Paradise episode 1, episode 2, and Imposter Factory episode X. So I was thinking the numerical episodes would actually be so X is X, not 10. So right. 1, 2, like numerical episode would actually be the episodes about the patients and two doctors. So at some point we could even see Dr. Ling and Dr. Winters, like Roxanne and Rob, go through a patient's memory. Even that would be a numerical episode, I think. But as far as the overarching story goes, that kind of primarily focus on that, then that would be alphabetical episodes. So that's the kind of the general plan for it. Like the story's going to go on in one way or another. However, that being said, in the near future, like the write up the next project, it's actually been something we've been working on, even maybe before Imposter Factory started. It's been in the works for quite a while now. It's actually the projects where most of the resources have been going to for a long time now. So that's something we hope to unveil in the coming future. Yeah, I don't want to say too much about it so far, but
no, that's fine. I think people, including myself, will be glad to hear that we're going to see more, and that we're going to grow, and that Freebird has future plans for SigCorp. So
yeah, for sure, in more ways than one.
Yeah. Moving along with that same question, it's almost like it was planned. The plans for any future mini-sodes and comic.
Yeah, I'm just gonna re-quote what I to be honest, there's a kind of nervousness about making mini-sode stuff like that, and just kind of I guess just a general pressure in terms of production value. When I think about it logically, I think it's not something that people care that much about in terms of the mini-sode, but and more, compared to say something like the story that it delivers in particular, but still it just feels more pressing that now the standards is kind of getting higher. But yeah, like I do toy around with the idea of a mini-sode for quite a while now. There are certain stories that I'm not sure, because like after the last comic, after Dell's comic, which took place after the end of Imposter Factory, there's a certain kind of like a important spot that I'm not sure like how to fill. So if I make a mini-sode now, would that be the one to fill the spot? There's just a lot of still kind of uncertainty about how to get across that kind of like an important knot.
How to communicate your vision.
Yeah, it's I'm not quite sure how that's going to end up, but yeah, I do think there's I do think there'll be a mini-sode one day, hopefully not too long.
Yeah. Awesome.
Moving forward, any advice to game developers?
Is this to aspiring game developers? Or? Okay. Well, to not get too dwelled up on the details at first, and just kind of try to find the easiest way, not necessarily the most efficient, but or the most even future-proof way, but just find the easiest way to get started, and the easy ways to kind of communicate exactly what you want to do. And I do think game making in some way is communicating. You're communicating a feeling, right? Even for like fighting games, you're still conveying a feeling of that intensity and triumph. So whatever it is, people joke around about RPG Maker, for example, and there's ground for that, and it's reasonable to, because a lot of things come out of it. I myself have contributed to the pile of crap so made, but at the same time, something like that, being able to just use the minimum amount of resource to create the most amount of effect in terms of is the particular thing you want to make, right? Not necessarily fit for everything, but you have that thing. For example, in my case, a narrative-driven thing. Just use the minimum possible effort. And I say that because even with the minimum amount of effort needed, it's still going to take a lot of effort. So that's something to kind of just go on to just finish a project, to go see the process from start to finish, and then for the next one, you'll have a much more developed sense of how long to delay your launch.
Until spring.
Until spring, always.
The next question is from Cobalt 343. Any scrapped storylines for any of the games?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of scrap story. I mean, just kind of, I wouldn't say scrapped, just kind of floating around. For example, like, I mean, even when we take Imposter Factory's concept, for example, it's like the whole murder mystery thing. What if we actually have patient who's a murderer, right? And that's something that actually I've seen come up more than once, and it's actually something that we've thought about too. And just all kinds of there's a lot of life stories out there that would be super interesting to tell, and different ways to tell it too. I mean, it doesn't have to be like, To the Moon and Finding Paradise is formulaic, linear way. There's actually like, if you really want to verge off, there's a lot of fascinating ways like to kind of dive into those narratives. So, but yeah, I don't think, because usually if something is set, then we develop it a lot more clearer. But when something's not set, it's usually just kind of rough ideas floating around. So I don't think there's much presentable, especially in terms of verbally communicating.
Yeah, there's no lost episodes then, I guess.
Yeah, no script just kind of lying around in the basement in my drawer number 2. No.
All right. Next one is also from Cobalt. 3 for 3. Is Lyra's melody done for good?
Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, it was something that I wanted to make after but Queen To the Moon came along instead, and yeah, I don't. I mean, never say never, but I don't plan on continuing finishing Lyra's melody at this point. I feel like it was a kind of experimentation to see that kind of verged too close to something else I really wanted to make instead. So yeah.
Also from Cobalt, he asks, what is your music writing process really like? They didn't accept your video, I guess.
They didn't. They couldn't see the but no, it's to be honest, it's nothing like magical or inspiring or anything like that. It's just, I just stare at the keyboard, try some chords, and it sounds good, and I just go with it, And but I do think of making a video for just kind of showing how I got into it, and kind of just I guess sort of the general process I go through. I don't consider myself like a composer, if that makes sense. Like just and nor am I like a pianist. Like, I mean, I can compose some stuff, I can play some stuff on the piano, and in my own ways that I feel I enjoy the process, but from like a professional kind of way, I think it's not, it's not very technical at all. It's kind of more in like a casual way, but at the same time I kind of enjoy it because it feels more carefree, that I don't have to worry too much about the technicality of things. It's just more about the general feeling of what's conveyed. Locked myself in a practice room one day once in high school, and just kind of just kept on playing the same chords. Wow. It's not even the 4 chords. 4 chords are too difficult. I just played 3 chords.
Wow. And then it became 2 notes.
That is the way. It just became 2 notes. You got to do those subtractions.
Well, that's fun, and it's also inspiring that you do not have to spend years of fine-tuning this craft and getting professional lessons to be able to create and enjoy creating music.
Yeah, I think I fine-tune myself in a kind of a worse way. My style of playing piano, basically, once you learn it, you suck forever. Because like piano, you develop habits, right? So the way I play it, when you master it, you forget how to actually play a piano. Like, it sounds okay with the stuff I write, which for a reason, but yeah, if you want to play like actual difficult classical pieces, no way.
Too many bad habits stacked up on
too many bad habits. Yeah, they have a song for that, I heard.
Cobalt as well as Stealth are asked, what is the meaning of 326?
Well, after that engaging breakdown of what 326 means, Stealth also asks, tell us about being a pilot.
It actually feels like a lot of work, to be honest. I mean, while you're on the ground, there's a lot of work while you're on the ground. There's actually a lot of paperwork too. But eventually, once you're up there, it's the nice thing about it is that I think there's a bit more of an overworld effect. Then so you do kind of have to have that as a passenger too, but to be able to control where it's going, it's kind of nice to kind of just look down and just kind of separate yourself and the problems, I think. I guess just gains a bit of perspective in that way. Not so much as astronauts, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But it's still nice in its own regard. I just kind of separate yourself from reality in one way or another for a while. So there's also, I mean, certainly, of course, there's the freedom for flight and whatnot, which is nice. But at the same time, sometimes it's not as free as it feels like, because there's a lot of traffic control zones and just kind of you gotta talk on the radio to make sure. It's just you can't really go wherever you want. It's certainly, I think that the main thing I love most about it is the perspective that it gives, and that's just kind of it's an escape.
All right. Muna asked, will the Nora case referenced in To the Moon ever be explored?
Never say never, but honestly, no plans at the moment. I do like the sense of the world being alive beyond what is known and what is shown, and when we're not playing the game and between the years that passed between the games and stuff like that, a lot of things still happen, and not everything that happens we see. So I think Nora's might be one of those cases.
To me, it kind of also reminds me of with the stuff that was talked about in Dell's comic, where it was like, it kind of happens off screen, but it's still very alive and it affects people.
Yeah, I do like that sense of room for imagination, just kind of wonder. But of course, on the other hand, it's always nice to be able to know the gist of what happens behind the scenes, because I think sometimes it shows in indirect ways, right? Because you kind of have a negative space that everything else gets painted around.
Rice and codename JK say, the creation process seems to have become more collaborative in Freebird games. How has growing a team shaped the series?
It certainly opened up more possibilities, and I'm grateful for everyone who's been able to come on board. Yeah, some of the stuff we're doing, even with Imposter Factory, and especially with the unannounced project, it's nowhere possible like when it was just me. Yeah, that's something I'm really grateful for, just for everyone to be on board, both physically and just mentally on the project, and just being able to be a part of it. I've got a lot to learn on my end in terms of working on the project with the team and try to because there's a lot of skills that I think I'm quite weak at this point. Yeah, it's something I'm looking forward to kind of develop and co-develop with everyone else, both the games and us as a team.
It's wonderful being a part of the team, just because everyone is so talented. It's incredible just to see, like, even like these like rough pieces, like they look and like are amazing, and it's cool seeing things grow, especially with the unannounced project, and even whenever Imposter Factory was still being developed, just to see how people like took something very small and then bigger and bigger. It just
and then the feedback between the team, as collaboration is gonna help expand on something and make it something that you yourself couldn't have made it.
Yeah, and one of the awesome things too is that when we have a team and everyone have their talents and personalities. For example, Joe is doing helping with the I would say community ambassador, right? And kind of outgoing and be able to fill that role so naturally. And whereas most of us on the team are quite introverted in one way or another, and it's just awesome to see how everyone's kind of just fits together and shines.
It's beautiful.
On to a very serious question. How old is Rob?
It's weird. I feel like he aged faster than every other character. At first, I thought he was kind of just like similar age, but he kept on getting older. I think it was Puree who started the trend. When it started, I feel like he was in his 20s, and now like a few years later, he was like in his 50s. So, how old is Rob? I don't know. That is a question. That's everybody wants to know, including me.
It's an organic process,
Yeah, it doesn't seem very organic to me, but
some people have their own like fan canon, like mental, like what they believe it is. So sometimes Rob's super young, other times
it's whatever fits the story the best at the time.
Yeah, maybe it's different timelines.
Yeah, that's true. True. Also asked by Liquid, Why does Eva curse with vegetables?
Why wouldn't she curse with vegetables? It's the natural thing to do. It's very organic. That's organic.
Q-Wish and Neo-chan ask, why did you name the company Freebird?
The name really just came from the first game I made. It was one of the main character from the game turns into a bird.
Mhm.
I think that's pretty much it.
Beautiful.
Birds are cool.
Yeah, birds. I mean, I'm not gonna argue with that. Violet! Exclamation point. And Kristen asked, is there any inspiration behind Neil and Eva?
I'm sure they are, but it's kind of scattered. I feel like a lot of the things too, a lot of the characters, they're all scattered inspiration. Like one character can be from a lot of folks that I know, and even myself. You know, it's kind of a bad joke, like myself, you know, a lot of garbage cans. I mean, but that's not that the way it goes. but yeah, I'm sure, but nothing I can particularly I think name.
Astert234, Zaki, and Serotonin ask, if you could change anything about the previous games, what would you do differently? Are there any regrets?
It's tricky. I mean, one thing I can say, like because Imposter Factory just came out and it's pretty fresh in my head, there's something that I objectively would change about it, and it's just to make it less linear, just kind of less just a corridor kind of interaction. There were some reasons why I tried that method at first, because I felt like it kind of fit along with certain themes of the, you know, the kind of the controlled tangent that you can't escape from in a way. But feelings aside, I think that's kind of a logical concept that doesn't really feel good in practice. So I don't think that worked out well. So yeah, I think it would have benefited more from being less linear and just, I mean, not in terms of story, but just in terms of exploring the scenes and the way the story and the scenes kind of unfold. That's something that's off the top of my head.
Loop Hat, codename JK, both ask, do you ever feel like you're stuck under the shadow of To the Moon and that you're afraid to branch out? Which I think we talked about.
We kind of did, yeah. There's always that pressure there, and not even just, you know, even when you're staying within the series, you know, what you do with the series, there's still quite a lot of pressure in terms of, you know, not from everybody, but enough to kind of to add some effect to it. But yeah, I mean, either whether or not we are kind of branching out, and we kind of have to, even for the good of the series itself.
Kat asks, is there an art book or concept art book in the future?
It is something that we kind of want to look into, because I mean, to be honest, like before Imposter Factory, we didn't really have a full-time art team or anything like that, so there weren't actually that many concept art or things to put in an art book. But at this point, like the stuff we're working on now, I think we do have some stuff. So yeah, so it's possible.
Marlon Dees, I don't know who this guy is. He asks, are you a plotter or a pantser? Okay, I'll just... So a plotter is someone who has like every like plot point figured out beforehand. And then a pantser is just like, I'm just gonna kind of figure it out as I go. Spoiler, you're a pantser.
I'm quite specific in terms of the ending before, like at the start of a project, but the way I get there, it's quite flexible. So a bit of both, I think.
Yeah.
Wait, but that would probably put me more in the latter.
Yeah, probably. Both of them work, so I mean.
So it kind of varies between projects too, I suppose.
Yeah, that's too. That's too.
All right, so Stern Lily asks, any plans for a full-length horror game?
Yeah. I mean, depends on what the full length means. I've always wanted to be able to unleash the dark side within me, you know, fully. I don't know, like my wife's actually kind of a big fan of horror genre in general, and we did talk about a few ideas that would make some fun games. But yeah, but so it's definitely on the plate, and so it's just a matter of like what kind of project we want to make with it at some point. But yeah, any plans? Yeah, there are plans.
Cool. Dane asks, have you ever had a genuine burnout from making the series?
every time I finish a game. So, and yeah, no, literally every time I finish a game, which I think is pretty normal too.
Especially how hard you go into it, like
yeah,
everything on the line.
I mean, I don't know about everything online, but like it's but this time around, like my arms just give out. Like right now, I think it's a month or almost 2 months after the release of the Cause Factory. Like I still can't work like type for longer than 15 minutes. It hasn't been like this before. It's kind of weird. So just be careful with your health, everyone. Just take little breaks. I mean, I think it's mostly from that time, like we just go on for hours and hours, like the whole day without even taking one break, which is bad. Don't do that. And before it happens, you never really think too much about it. But once it happens, you're like, whoa, this thing's real.
Juke asks, what composing software do you use? DAW, sound fonts, VST, etc.
For the longest time, what I used was Finale for composing. I didn't actually use a DAW, so I just used Finale like first, like Finale 08, and then a few years later I switched to Finale 2011. I just downloaded Notion 6, so I'm hoping to try that out to kind of switch from the 10-year-old program. But in terms of the sound font, I used to do Garrison Personal Orchestra and some East-West library. Nowadays, I just recently got the Composer Cloud, SoundCloud or something like that. It's kind of like a subscription thing, like $20 a month. But you get access to all this crazy expensive, back then they were like all the libraries of East-West. So I still haven't gone and tried that out much, but I'm kind of excited to see how it goes.
Bubbo,
to just do a plug for it. Sorry.
A little plug. No, that's fine. We'll do a little. We're not sponsored by that company. Bubbo asks, who is your favorite composer?
Alan Silvestri is one of them. Is that his name? The one who did Forrest Gump? And many other things. The melodies are quite distinguished. And the composer for Wall-E's soundtrack. I can't remember his name right now.
We'll put it up on the thing here, so that way it helps you. You don't have to say the names.
In terms of video composer, Mitsuda, I think. And all these guys with the cool names. The guy who did Dragon Age Origin. I just remember there was I and Enorm. This is not very respectful. I should be looking this up.
No,
I should memorize their names and just kind of tattoo. So, I'm sorry, but yeah, like
you'll just rip up your arm and you'll have like the names going up, you know.
Yeah, that's how I learned. Never make the mistakes again. Like I'm not sure if like they're literally the favorite, but they're certainly up there. And I always have kind of trouble with the what's the favorite questions, because sometimes in the moment you never remember.
Yeah, right.
Zaki asks, what was your inspiration for founding Paradise and Faye?
A lot of inspirations, honestly, but I suppose a lot of things I make, they tend to come from a lot of sources, but perhaps the most... Is this like a bait to have me say myself?
I don't know. Listen, I didn't ask the question. Well, I mean, we asked the question.
We just deliver it.
Yeah, we're just the messengers. Okay.
Well, I guess one day maybe I'll answer it in a more elaborate manner through action. But yeah, for now, I'll skip the question.
Ooh, it's mysterious. I like it. All right, the next question is from Zaki again. Could we get a little sneak peek into what the next game is going to be about?
Next Zigward game or next Freebird game?
No idea.
Oh, well.
At your discretion.
Then, well, I mean, either way, the answer is no. But I don't, yeah, because I don't know how exactly to do the sneak peek without, but I think it'll come soon enough, some kind of sneak peek. So I think right now we can just enjoy the calm before the storm.
Beautiful. I love that both his questions were no.
Scarlet Ma asks, favorite game growing up?
It's RPG about a kid who can talk to dogs and cats of the town, any animals really, but there's like a war between the dogs and cats of the town, so you kind of and then the mafia gets involved and there's a volcano. But it's kind of a wild ride, but I don't think anyone's West has heard of it because there's no localization. But yeah, it's called Toontown. Yeah, it's like add cat, add dog was the Amago was the original name. But yeah, Toontown is the English name, Tuntow. But I'm not sure there's a lot of information out there because it's been quite a while. It's never been localized, but you'll find a lot of dogs and cats in that one. It's got great pixel art too.
Kristen asks, do you enjoy seeing fans come up with theories?
I love the anguish on their faces as they realize the theories are wrong. Well, I mean, honestly, they're right in more times than I can count, to be honest. But yeah, and I love reading theories. It's always wonderful to see folks who just put a lot of thoughts into it and just kind of sometimes take it to even more fascinating spots than I imagined. And it kind of reminds me, like I sometimes do that too, right? With a lot of try to just with a lot of the other works I follow. I love just digging around and just kind of thinking about what could be and all the connecting points too, with like the pin board on the wall. But yeah, it's always fascinating to read for sure. It's also very helpful to kind of know what folks are kind of expecting and what they're not expecting. Usually they're expecting everything, which kind of puts me at the top spot.
Moomin Papa asks, how do you respond to constructive criticism?
I love constructive. I mean, but the thing is, I think nowadays it feels different compared to like back then, because usually when we release a game nowadays, there's been a lot of like really helpful testing and stuff like that already, so that we kind of like when certain things are wrong, we for the most part we know that it's wrong, and it could be improved. But it's a matter of time and resources, and kind of just maybe at the start, way earlier, we kind of went off in a kind of bad direction or something. So it's something like that. So usually now, what really kind of help, what constructive criticism and just not just feedback, but kind of reception of a project in general, it becomes more interesting in the sense that we see where each feedback comes from, like each who likes it, who doesn't like it, and who doesn't like it for that reason, right? All those reasons are already kind of laid out, but just kind of seeing, the folks here who like that didn't like this part of this thing. So you kind of just, it kind of paints a map of where everything is every time instead of what everything is, because what you kind of already have an idea, so it's a matter of kind of distribution of reception. Yeah. That sounds kind of like
corporate,
dry and corporate. Yeah, and I kind of find it weird too, but eventually that's kind of how it feels like. Like back then, I do remember. I like to think that I've always been receptive to criticism. I mean, everybody says that, right? But who knows? Maybe I wasn't. But I try to always learn from it too. But that being said, I think even back then, when I was really patient with it, I did sometimes feel like a sting, right? And still, like you put hard sweating to it, and of course, so there was that sting. But nowadays, actually, there's not so much of that anymore. Like now, I actually like. I don't know if it's not even a matter of like hardened or whatnot. It's just what's wrong. More like, oh yeah, there's that and there's that. So but I think in some way that helps a lot too, because it certainly is easier to take it purely for the very helpful nature.
Moomin Papa and JG ask, any movies or books that you'd recommend?
I do like, I mean, this is kind of a weird one, but not weird, but weird in this context. Like it's the nonfiction Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational. It's kind of like this book on just general human nature, and all his follow-up books are very fascinating. Along similar lines, You Are Not So Smart the book. I mean, it has to do with like I guess human nature and just people in general. And the follow-up, You Are Now Less Dumb, is the sequel. I forgot the author for that book, sadly, but yeah, those are fun books too. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, of course, that's a classic. In terms of movies, WALL-E, I think that's probably my favorite film. So I'll just leave it at that.
It's a great film.
It is.
Codename JK asks, how have limitations of RPG Maker influenced your design decisions?
So certainly there's been limitations in the sense that it's limited. Like I wasn't able to do certain things I wanted to do. But at the same time, I wouldn't say the limitations were all bad, because I mean, limitation breeds creativity and whatnot, right? Sometimes you have that frame around what you can do, and then you can focus on what you can do really well within that frame, or at least try. So for me, it just happened to be, for the most part, what I needed, something like the Moon series. Like for example, I really personally, I like the isometric style. Like it's still like a pixel art kind of way, but it's really hard to do that within RPG Maker. So that's certainly a design decision I would say influenced by the engine. It's hard to say what specific thing got changed, but whatever it is, like it is the way it is, partly due to the engine, the good and the bad. So one of the things that did influence was the games got done, which may not have if it weren't for that.
Savannah Waifu says, what's your favorite food?
It's called kulai. I guess it's like steamed fries, kind of a local food from where I came. No, sort of where I came from. My grandparents used to make it. It's kind of this thing you kind of just make it with potatoes. I mean, steamed fries sounds weird. It is not tasty, but this is actually really tasty, and I don't know how to describe it. But it's like you have potatoes and flour, and just kind of steam it with certain kind of herbs, and it's yeah. But it is what it is. But I'm not quite sure if I can bring the salivating imagery with my verbal descriptions.
The limitations.
Yeah, limitations of the Zoom engine.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Stealth asks, do the colors of the memory orbs correspond to exact emotions? For example, blue is sadness, purple longing, red anxiety, etc.
Now, the reason why this came up is because of the recent announcement of the Bestest Memories card game. And they have the different emotions with different memory orbs. At least that's the mentality.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, and that was kind of interesting to me too. To be honest, I don't remember certain small decisions back then, but I don't think it was always like that. But I do remember trying to fit the colors into the scenes in whichever way that was working for each of the scenes. So sometimes it may have been emotions, sometimes it may have been like the objects that you get them from. So yeah, I don't think it was like a universal thing necessarily, but there was some kind of a theme, ongoing connection to where they came from.
I don't think you've realized how much fuel you've just put on a fire right there. People are going to be scouring over like individual scenes. Stealth asked also, why was the platypus chosen for To the Moon? Like, why a platypus?
Nothing else was choosing a platypus for something, so we had to do it. But there was Perry the platypus though, which actually I didn't know before. Yeah, so it was getting some representation there, but I'm still glad he helped out.
Underrepresented animal. Cobbled343 asks, what bird is the Freebird logo based on?
I'm not sure. It kept on changing. We actually, for those who don't know, we actually went through 3 iterations of the Freebird logo. The earliest one was one I made as like with the F as a bird design, which I thought was ingenious, but everyone just didn't know that was an F and thought it was Rebird Games. So I had to change it. Yeah. So the second version became like a much smaller bird. Like it looks kind of like almost like a sparrow or something. Mm-hmm. And then I think that was made by my cousin, and then the newest ones made by my wife. That was kind of looks like a bird of paradise-ish kind of thing. So I'm not sure, honestly. Whichever bird that casts the shadow, and I think more than one bird could cast the shadow at the right angle. So some room for imagination there.
That's awesome. Now we're going to cut categories now. From this point on, all of the questions will have Imposter Factory spoilers in them. All right. So, because we have a whole bunch of people that have questions specifically about Imposter Factory.